They have been waiting for years to walk down the aisle. Gay and lesbian couples in our city fighting for the right to legally marry. Today, they won that right after a ruling by the province's highest court. And right after that, one couple decided to make it official.
That was the moment in June of 2003 when Michael Leshner and Michael Stark made history in Canada as they became the country's first legally married same-sex couple.
I'm Michael.
I'm Michael.
Take you, Michael.
Take you, Michael.
Do hereby pronounce you, Michael and Michael, to be lawfully married spouses.
And boy, were there headlines. They even spoke to CBC just hours after the wedding.
Gentlemen, do you want to show us your rings?
I sure do. Where else? It's a novel feeling. Where else would a honeymoon couple be but shivering outside the CBC building?
2 years later, same-sex marriage was legal across the country. But the thing to realize here is just how rough the road was to get there. Like, it's very easy to look back at the high points and think, you know, wow, what progress was made. But consider just 1 decade earlier, lawmakers couldn't even agree to add sexual orientation to the Canadian Human Rights Act. A bill was introduced, but it didn't pass. Even in the following year, another attempt failed, the bill just dying on the House floor. It was only in 1996 Canada finally recognized in law that sexual orientation should be protected.
As part of any civil rights movement, you look at women's, the Black community, I mean, there's a lot of parallels. Like, we all go through a lot of similar processes and steps, and it takes, within any movement, it takes a few very brave people who will do it regardless of what the, potential negative is.
But welcome to 2023, 20 years after the Michaels' historic milestone, and maybe we shouldn't be celebrating too soon.
The fact that over 500 anti-LGBTQ plus bills have been introduced, even if they don't pass into law, it is having a devastating impact on the safety and well-being of our community.
Concerned watching what's going on in the States.
When you see it south of the border, it's really quite scary. And you just know the only reason, again, it's certain people preying on the fears and ignorance of the society at large, who unfortunately are very receptive to the negativity and the hate and the fear.
And what's more, they say anyone who thinks Canada is special, immune to whatever possible backslide might be happening in the States, for example, think again. Okay, so let's talk about this. Philippe de Montigny joins us right now. You're from Radio-Canada. You've spoken with the Michaels about all of this, and I will ask you about Canada, but let's understand the American picture first, because that's where a lot of the concern almost sprouts from.
Right. For the Michaels in particular, they're a very avid consumer of news, and they follow this stuff all the time. They're having their raspberry pancakes, they're having their tea in their kitchen, and they like to have discussions about what's sort of going on in terms of LGBTQ rights. Michael Leshner was telling me that what we're seeing in the US kind of springs out of nowhere. He feels like it's not part of the natural evolution of societal issues. And they often see progress as when people are enabled to live as their most authentic selves.
Sure.
They now see that this is completely the opposite of that.
That almost rights are being rolled back.
Things are going backwards. And, they're seeing drag artists being targeted for simply doing their jobs, or seeing trans people being denied access to gender-affirming care. And for them, that kind of brings them back to the early 80s.
At first, I thought they were bikers, and then it dawned on me almost immediately that they were cops. I decided that rather than run down to see what they wanted, that I would go and warn everyone on the second floor that we were being raided. And they grabbed me on the stairwell and took me downstairs into one of 3 holding areas, which was down where we had our pool table across from the swimming pool. There we were kept, about 40 of us. There were 156 people in the bath in total. Women and men in the community went from disbelief to just rage. Rather than letting that anger weigh us down, debilitate and demobilize us, we were able to channel it.
Nearly 300 gay men were arrested by police very violently, accused of sex work, indecent acts. At the time, there was that kind of notion that homosexuality was associated with pedophilia. We're seeing very similar messaging from certain groups today, groups that are claiming to want to protect the children. What Mike Stark was saying is that those bathhouse raids was very much galvanizing the community to step up and demand that their rights be recognized and demand that they be respected as human beings. And that sort of mobilization is what we're seeing maybe more predominantly in the US.
When we get those rights that are recognized, you can't take it for granted ever. And you have to then thereafter constantly be vigilant about protecting those rights and ensuring they're not chipped away. And unfortunately, that's what's happening right now.
How much of that sentiment do we see translating to Canada specifically?
I mean, LGBTQ advocates will tell you that it might be a little bit more subtle. It's maybe not as overt out here in Canada, but they sense that that political climate is very much seeping into Canada.
Because what would they point to specifically as the the causes of concern? You see that thing happening right there. That's what I'm talking about.
The most recent example this past week, New Brunswick made sweeping changes to school policy.
Policy 713.
Exactly.
It was brought in 2020 to set requirements for schools to provide an inclusive environment. It was mandatory for teachers to respect the chosen names and pronouns of children. Now the government says if the child is under 16, staff will need a parent's permission to officially change the child's name.
Other examples, in Ontario, there was a school board north of Toronto, the York Catholic District School Board, that voted against flying the pride flag this month.
The fact that 64% of the kids in our schools are being targeted for their identities and nothing is being done about it. You can't have an education. You can't have an education in a safe, inclusive environment in many provinces in this country, right? I mean, these are things that are happening, insidious things that are happening to people on a daily basis.
There is another municipality around London, Ontario, that decided to do the same thing for municipal buildings. There's drag story time. That's all across the country, in Alberta, in Quebec, in Ontario, elsewhere.
In the United States as well.
In the United States as well. We're seeing drag story time sort of becoming a target for certain groups. And that's basically just drag queens that are, reading children's stories to kids.
And Philippe, can I ask you what your sense is from your reporting of where the momentum is globally, right? Because we tend to think of Canada as being something of a trailblazer, right? Certainly with regards to same-sex marriage, but so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I mean, what are we seeing internationally? Are they following Canada's example? Are they going in a different direction? What is it?
Well, Canada was very much sort of ahead of the game. They legalized same-sex marriage in 2005. That was under Paul Martin's Liberal government. Canada became the 4th country in the world to legalize same-sex marriage after the Netherlands, Belgium, and Spain. And if we look at the map, more than 30 countries, I think it's 34 countries now, have legalized gay marriage, and there are more to come. We're closely watching Japan, we're closely watching Korea, because in both of those countries, courts have ruled that bans against same-sex marriage are unconstitutional. But what I want to draw your attention to on this map is what's not colored in. Nearly 70 countries are still seeing homosexuality as a crime. In a dozen of them, that's a crime punishable by death. So what LGBTQ advocates are saying is that we do have to take time to sort of celebrate our progress. We do have to take time to celebrate our milestones. 2 decades of same-sex marriages, Canada is something to be proud of, but they say that there's still a lot of work to do.
Philippe de Montigny, excellent opportunity to take stock of things. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.